I'm going to ask one more question, then I'll throw it open to the floor. I think we need to talk about the singing, because the first thing that snapped this film away from the normal zeitgeist of action hero movies was the first trailer, which had men, dwarves, singing. From your perspective, you were a song and dance man before you went into the more serious side of drama, and what it was like to actually sing in camera, so to speak, with the other dwarves.
I did a production of The Hobbit when I was 13, which was a musical, really. So I knew that Tolkien had written loads of songs through the literature, so I was really excited that they were going to put this song in. Fran Walsh wrote the theme. That Fran is Peter's partner and writing partner, and she wrote the tune. So I was really honoured to have been asked to take the first line of that song. I didn't want him to sound like a singer, so I listened to a lot of Russian church music. I listened to a male voice choir, Welsh male voice choir, and I worked with a pianist, and we slowly took the pitch down and down until we got to a point that it sounded as Tolkien was describing it, which was the deep-throated singing of the dwarves. And then we went into a studio, we recorded it a number of times. I wanted to keep recording it until the end of time because I was not ever happy with it. But yeah, I think it was one of those moments that they didn't know what that song was going to sound like. And when, obviously all of the men and the boys, the other dwarves, that blend of sound was so beautiful that they just decided to use it as the trailer.
Far over the misty mountains cold, to dungeons deep and caverns. Did you ever record the full version of that song? I know Neil Finn did it, but it's not as good.
You're about to see the film, and it is quite long. So, if that song had been any longer, I think people would have got a bit impatient. But there was a moment where I nearly got to sing the song at the end. Nearly. But I just thought it was maybe not appropriate that one of the characters would sing. But that was the full version of the song. In the movie, Neil Finn did a version of the final song, which he extended and wrote and developed, which I absolutely love. But no, I'm hoping there'll be more singing in movies 2 and 3.
How much of an input did you and the other dwarves have into the final looks of your characters?
The whole process working with Peter and his team was collaborative. At every stage, my opinion was valued, down to the shape of the body, the shape of the costumes, the length of the costume, the length of the hair. I remember asking for more grey at the sides because I felt that it would really give him more age, and I wanted that pelt, the fur pelt, because I'd originally conceived Thorin as being like a bison, and I wanted that upper body bulk. And whenever I didn't have that fur on, I really felt that I was sort of missing a part of him. So as much as it was hot and heavy, and they'd always say, you can do this scene without the pelt if you want, and I'd be like, no, I need it. I like it. It makes me feel like the character.
Can you talk more specifically about how the way you imagined Thorin as a child compares with the role you created under Peter's vision?
Yeah, it's very interesting because I was trying to listen to both of those voices, because I do remember very clearly reading the book as a 12-year-old, and then as a slightly older than 12-year-old man. As a kid, I was focused very much on Bilbo, and then as an adult, I was focusing on Thorin, but I had seen him probably as a bit older. But it was important that he was a potential king, that he was somebody that could return to his throne and lead his people and show his prowess on the battlefield. So I think we found a place which was older than I am, but he still had the youth to be able to swing that sword around and really fight for his people, which was important.
Hey Richard, I was just wondering if you could talk a bit about Peter Jackson's kind of technique with directing actors. So none of the technical direction, just how he gets the performance out of the actors, what he says, does he give you adjustments, etc.?
It was always very difficult to get Peter to sit down before you went onto set to talk about the character or the process or the story. He actually likes to have that conversation while the camera's rolling. So the whole thing feels like an experiment. He loves it when you develop an idea and he'll go with you. It takes a while for you to find that path together. But one of the things he does, which I absolutely love, is that he'll use another actor to get the performance out of somebody. So he doesn't necessarily come to you and say, I want this response. He'll take an actor away that you're going to work with. I had a moment in movie 3, which I can't talk about, with Martin, where I was in the middle of a scene, and he took Martin away. I didn't know that he'd done this, and Martin came back and played something to me which got quite an extraordinary response from me that I had not predicted, and that was the take. And that's exactly what he does. And he did it to me as well. I have a scene with Keely, and he took me aside and he said, I want you to say this, I want you to do this. And, you know, we got the response from Aidan. And it's such a great way to work because you don't know that he's having an effect on you.
From an actor's perspective, can you tell me what you learned that was different doing something as massive as The Hobbit as opposed to doing TV series like Spooks and Robin Hood, and which do you prefer?
The main thing really is time, and when you've got a budget like we had for The Hobbit, it buys you so much time. So I really, because in television you do 2 or 3 takes and you move on, and there's this urgency to the shoot. I mean, don't get me wrong, there was an urgency to the shoot, but there was time to experiment, and really that's what I'm talking about in regards to that last question. But also working on a green screen, which I'd never done before, I was nervous of it, but in fact what it does is it fires up your imagination, and you know, I come from a theatre background, so it was tapping into a lot of old things that I'd forgotten about that you have to imagine, so I really enjoyed that aspect of it.
What elements of Thorin's character can you relate to the most, and do you have any personal life experiences that helped you shape your portrayal of Thorin?
I suppose the thing I really love about Thorin really is that he does have a fear of what he's going to do. He is stepping into the unknown, and he's on a path towards something which is both thrilling. He will get to be a king, and he will accumulate a huge amount of wealth. But at the same time, in that mountain is the most terrifying thing that he's ever experienced in his life, and he has experienced it. You know, the dragon, really, I assimilated that to a holocaust of some kind. I was using the bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima in terms of the extraordinary devastation that it caused. So he's experienced that. So, I mean, I think that's the thing that I was most fascinated with, is that he's walking towards something that he wants, but at the same time it's repelling him. And Tolkien did write about that story in the appendices, which we were allowed to use as a source reference. So, I mean, I love to write a biography for the character, so I used all of that, and then added some things myself that I felt would help me, because I knew we were going to do a prologue. So I tried to imagine what happened on that day when the dragon came, so that when that character opens the door to the mountain and smells the air, it has such a sense memory for him of what happened to him as a child. And you know, all of these things, as much as they burden him, they drive him forward. So it was one of the best reasons to play the role.